Okay, everybody. I know it's been a little while since I came on here with a Celestial Chatter, but it's because I'm traveling. I am currently in Louisville, Kentucky, and I have a few moments this morning to kind of look at the next week that's coming ahead. And may as well go over and take a look at the charts. Well, technically, in looking at everything that was going to go on this week, I just noticed Wednesday and Thursday. Those are the 2 days of the week I'm going to focus on because there are things transpiring that it would be good to be aware of. Right off the bat, this particular chart that you can see right here, this is the chart for the solar eclipse, which happens at 9 o'clock p.m. on Wednesday, the 19th, which is around midnight East Coast time in the United States, East Coast Daylight Time. Eclipses. Where do you want to begin with an eclipse consideration? First of all, the basics. It's a new moon, and as such, this particular new moon falling right there on the very last degree of Aries ask us questions about, as usual, since it is a new moon, what kind of intentions might be appropriate to set for this next, should we call it a lunar cycle, but it's more of an extended cyclic consideration because it is an eclipse. And I'm not exactly sure. If I look at this chart, which is for basically 9:12 in the evening on the West Coast, and I can see that the sun essentially has gone down already, and on the East Coast it's gone down 3 hours ago. So what do we have? We have as far as the United States goes, and the visual ability to see this eclipse, not likely to be the case because it's happening at night, and the moon moving in front of the sun only would be visible from those places on the opposite side of the earth where it is daytime. So nonetheless, it's still an eclipse, and eclipses carry a footprint that extends just a wee bit further than trying to consider what's going on for this month ahead. I'm going to just look real briefly here at the Sabian symbol from Dane Rudger's An Astrological Mandala as something to use as in a divinatory process to consider where might this consideration fall in your own makeup. We'll get to where this might fall in your own chart thing next, but this is the last degree, 29 degrees of Aries, also considered a challenging degree because there's a transition of energy that's underway. The leaving behind of that driving energy, impulsive, airy, and strike out and do something kind of energy as it prepares to step across the line into a little bit more relaxed and not quite so driven Taurian space. Sabian symbol reads, a duck pond and its brood. A keynote, the realization of natural boundaries. And we're talking about a boundary here, that one that exists between Aries and Taurus. After the preceding symbol, which was the music of the spheres, no small or minor consideration in and of itself, that keynote would have been attunement to cosmic order. So you can kind of see that if you look at how the unfolding of the Sabian symbols works, each symbol sets something up that is followed by an energy that it's related to it. It's a next step in a sequential process, kind of like the signs of the zodiac going around the wheel. And if we consider that right now, this is the direction that they're going. I know, yeah, sun's going down theoretically. It looks like everything's going this way, but it's because the wheel is spinning this way, and the sun is just getting ready to step across the border into Taurus, as is the moon into Taurus on the very next day. We will get to that day next. Okay, after the preceding chapter, this seems anticlimactic. What is shown here is that every form of activity that has its limits, and that even the consciousness that has been able to get a glimpse of universal order has to bring down to its own karmic field of operation the message of harmony it has heard inwardly. Peace and inner contentment with one's essential destiny, dharma, is required to meet the everyday world. The mystic may experience flights of imagination and transcendent vision, but he must return to the concrete earth and to the task in the social environment. Extensive as the latter may seem, it is still very small compared to the galactic field. It is indeed a duck pond compared to the ocean. But it is there. The substance for concrete action has to be found. And every effective activity has to be focused. Thus, the boundaries imposed by the very nature of this activity have to be consciously accepted. This is the last stage in the last 5-field sequence related to the second scene, characterized by potency. It leads to the third scene, whose keyword is substantiation. Potency has to become substantiated. It has to mate with substance in order to be effective power. Power must accept the principle of focalization. So in considering the intention setting of what is it that we want to accomplish during this next lunar cycle, beginning at this penultimate degree of Aries, where might that change factor be implemented in an effective way for us to perhaps visualize, or at least conceptualize within our consciousness the fact that a very highly energetic cycle is drawn to a close. And as such, we're being asked to, in a way, containerize, package what it is that has transpired in a place that isn't quite so adamant and present all along, because there's a new cycle beckoning our attention to participate differently than that Aryan driving energy. For Taurus, it is time to say, Jill, brothers and sisters, we have been so active over the past month. It's time to take a breather. Time to, relax a little bit, enjoy the fruits of life, be in contact more consistently with our physical realm. Not so much, that impulsive drive that has been, keeping us, go, 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 go. Anyway, it's like, as it is, perhaps not necessarily observed by each of us, the natural cycle essentially relaxes into what is coming over the eastern horizon as an awakening moment to enjoy that particular connection to the particular location where we are and all of its eh, all of its participants within the region where we find ourselves. From a natural standpoint, are we paying attention to the fauna and flora around us, to our animal neighbors, as well as human neighbors, and to all the natural creatures, essences, to the wind and the clouds and the weather? Can you feel that substance that you are being invited to participate with? Since this happens just within a few hours after the eclipse, our intention setting should take into account our particular place in the natural unfoldment of life. On the very next day, let's see if we can go to a slightly different chart. And it's coming, folks. I'm going to have to stop the share in order to make sure that we get to the right chart. There we go. Monday. Well, we've already left Monday in the dust. We're on to a whole different realm of consideration. Tuesday, Wednesday night, as you can kind of see, the moon and the sun they're working close together. And the moon, basically, before it does the solar dance at this eclipse thing, traverses itself across Jupiter. The energy has just been kicked up. Anyway, it's that kind of energy. You can kind of feel it. Is it really trailing behind us? Jupiter is not necessarily inclined to assume that kind of position. And it's in Aries, another fire sign. After all, it does rule. Fire sign Sagittarius is saying to that moon, can you feel the potential that I am providing for you to seek more? Wednesday comes along. Taurus, the sun moves into Taurus real early on that day. And as such, it forms a square immediately with Pluto up here at 0 degrees of Aquarius from 0 degrees Taurus. you have to ask yourself, quite particularly because the Plutonian factor is never something that you can just shine on and say, nah, I'm not going to really pay attention to you at this particular moment. I don't think that Pluto will appropriately allow that kind of substance to take place. And so you have to ask yourself, what are the deeper ramifications that, the underpinning or the underlying energies that are at work here, trying to stir substance from deep beneath the surface of experiences that are going on, that are beckoning you to, to open up channels that you haven't really aimed at particularly. Well, they're there. They are definitely there. And this square coming between the sun and Pluto on this particular day, right after a solar eclipse, is saying, the intentions that you set for this particular lunar cycle are going to be with you for a while. And they're going to ask you quite particularly, because the Plutonian consideration is part of this eclipse. There are factors underneath the surface that perhaps are bubbling up just a little bit more adamantly than usual, making one aware of things that one didn't, just didn't perceive before then. And to, since nothing ever exists in a vacuum in this astrological dance that we are doing on this very same day, if you look right down here, here's Mercury. See that little S right up there by it? Mercury has stationed, which means that it's going into its retrograde cycle, the first retrograde cycle of the year. It would be advisable. And since this I'm going to be putting out a couple of days early this week, setting your intention for this upcoming eclipse cycle, and keeping in mind that we're sitting right there on the that last minute transition between Mercury being direct and Mercury going retrograde. This is always an ideal time to try not to be too overt. We just come out of Aries, that overt potential in what it is that you might be inclined to say to one another at this time, because when Mercury goes retrograde, it's a ideal time for reflection on things. One factor always in play with a Mercury retrograde is that this is an ideal time to really hone in on something that you want to study more implicitly and try to get, shall we call it, organized, or at least understood more effectively as an appropriate factor in one's makeup, in one's intentions as to what to do. However, in order for that to work effectively, one has to gather to oneself the raw materials, if you will, required in accomplishing that investigation process. Because during Mercury retrograde is a great time to, actually go through different kinds of material that you need to understand more implicitly if you are going to put together or build a particular kind of substance or dream or something that you're intending to accomplish. Mercury retrograde times are ideal for doing that sort of exploration. It's best, however, as I've indicated, to make sure that if there are materials that you're going to require in this investigation process, try to get them together before Mercury goes retrograde. Because once Mercury goes retrograde, a lot of times our thinking process, they can become just a wee bit, or maybe even extensively muddled. What would we do without muddle? So prepare yourself. This is the key. And Mercury will be retrograde until the 15th of May. So it's going to be a while. This is a long, let's take a look. When I look at this, by the way, is what I'm looking at, is a graph of the planets' movements for the year. And in considering the context of each Mercury retrograde cycle, of which there are at least 3 every year, I look to see how far does Mercury go back? How long does it take? Because these are factors that set particular parameters to be aware of as far as, is this going to be an intense or a less intense Mercury retrograde cycle? Well, this first one of the year, it goes back to 6 degrees of Taurus, which is where it's going to go direct. So you can kind of see that it's moving from back 11 degrees in the zodiac. Actually, it's moving back 9 degrees in the zodiac. So it's not moving back very far. So if you consider something as, basically staying within a narrow parameter, this is a narrow parameter, only moving back 9 degrees in that, length of time till the 15th of May. It brings an intensity to the focus because it's hovering just in those 9 degrees of the zodiac. And oftentimes you can get a Mercury retrograde that'll go back 20 degrees, 21 degrees. And so you can kind of see there's a very dynamic focus of the energy experience to this particular Mercury retrograde, which means it would be helpful, or at least advisable, to keep in mind, Mercury mind we're talking about here, that you're not alone in feeling the potential intensity of what is being, what is attempting to be brought to focus by our mercurial mental facilities, also our oral verbal facilities, in a way that can allow us to really focus very particularly. We're all going through this, remember, on the heels of this solar eclipse that is very much the energy of the cycle for this particular Mercury retrograde. Are we actually, paying attention to that energetic transition where we can release those things that have been driving us so adamantly to accomplish something, and just relax into the experience of recognizing that, wow, I'm going through a deeper consideration of what is potential ahead of me. Am I paying attention to all the participants that are particular to this time, that are traveling with me? That's a key. We're not doing this, we're never really doing this alone. This particular cycle reminds us, or should remind us, that, what is it that our intentions are aiming at? Are we aiming to try and accomplish something on our own? Taurus is a sign ruled by Venus. Venus is a planet of togetherness, partnership, relationship, art. Can there be some factor of artistic expression coming through what it is that we are intending for this particular eclipse cycle to awaken us to? I'm looking at all my factors here. Those, by the way, are the main factors that this upcoming week has in store, as far as I am going to consider with you. And with that, I will continue along the journey that I'm in and on. Have been visiting my granddaughter and daughter and husband here in Louisville, Kentucky, and will be proceeding forth on a return journey via Tennessee and parts south as we go back through Phoenix to visit my wife Jackie's family and relatives there. So, not sure when the next celestial chatter is going to happen, but I had a moment this morning to check in with you and let you know that no, I haven't abandoned anybody, and I'm just on an adventure, and I will get to this when I can. Thank you much. See you all next week or sometime.